Yeah.
What's up, Ben?
Hey, it's Steve Weiss Music. Welcome to the Hartt Percussion Department. This office is like, okay, as they say in Jaws, we need a bigger boat. There's so much stuff packed in here, but I kind of dig that in a way. So we're going to go quickly around the studio, and I'll just point to a small percentage of what the students have access to in our program. But since it's really about the students at any school, I'm going to start with a quick history of our percussion ensemble concerts. In fact, if you slowly pan to your left, the bottom left orange one there, it says Hartt Percussion Ensemble. It's a John Cage music circus. That was my first percussion ensemble concert at the Hartt School. It was 1992. We did a music circus featuring, much of Cage's music. And all these posters are all the percussion ensemble concerts we've done, which of course includes percussion ensemble, the graduate percussion group, and the steel band. So every concert for 31 years is there, and then we always have a theme, which is kind of interesting. For example, our upcoming percussion ensemble concert, the theme is metal instruments. So everything we play in the whole evening is made of metal. And then actually we ran out of room, so we started to reduce them and put 4 concerts, which we do each year, onto one little 8.5 by 11 because, I figure when I finish the wall, maybe it's time to consider retiring, but we'll see how that goes. So anyhow, it's also a great resource to have these posters because it's a reminder of what we've played. Like I can look at the poster and recall, we played Third Construction there, or we played Ostinato Pianissimo, or we played, a concert featuring the music of David McBride. So it's a useful resource for the students as well. A good segue is we have 2 percussion awards. We have the Al Lepak Scholarship, which goes to a returning undergraduate student. And I found that to be a little limiting. We have lots of graduate students. We have some graduating undergraduate students that I felt were worthy of an award. And we also have a unique major here in acoustics and music. And they were not eligible for the Lepak Scholarship because they matriculated at the College of Engineering. So I instituted the John Cage Award, which is sort of wide open. That can be to any student. So each year we give 2 awards for outstanding percussionists. And if you take a closer look, you'll see lots of familiar names on there, guys that are teaching around the country or playing on Broadway or playing in the Quay Percussion Duo or whatever. So you see we've got, this is a small portion of our tam-tam and gong collection. And, Zildjian would import these things, the Gliss gongs and the wind gongs, etc., from Wuhan and put their label on them. And the ones that are not labeled, incidentally, I bought years ago when I was traveling in Hong Kong with the percussion group Cincinnati and had the luxury of hand-picking them from several dozen gongs. And I should say that this collection is mostly Hartt School. I'd say 10% or 15% is my gear, but most of my gear is in my home studio. But those things we use occasionally, so we leave them where they're accessible. Of course, you need an assortment of wind chimes. You never know what you're going to be asked to play. And as a disclaimer, these are all mine. They're beautiful instruments, and they came in handy when Gene and I played and So the Wind Blew, which was really fun. There's some unusual but meaningful instruments right here on the wall. This is a mark tree that was made by a friend of mine named Michael Gould, who teaches jazz percussion at University of Michigan. And when I got the job at the Hartt School, when I got the job in the percussion group Cincinnati, I was in the middle of my graduate work at Illinois, and Michael took me out for lunch with a few other friends and gave me this as a present. And he said, Ben, he was like a sophomore at the time. He said, Ben, I want you to know that it's really inspiring to us that you got this job with the percussion group Cincinnati. I would like you to take this gift. I made this for you as a present. And it's been in my office ever since. So Michael Gould, a good friend. And then this was from my very first concert with the percussion group. Played a piece by Frederick Jeffsky called Force, for which I had to play bamboo, panpipes, and I had to build it myself because it was requiring specific pitches. So I played bamboo panpipes, Jim Culley played hammered dulcimer, and Alan Oddie very appropriately played water, fire, and earth. And we'll leave it at that. It was a very out piece, which also involved sort of slow motion recitation of lines from the Iliad. Check it out, Forced by Frederick Jeffsky. As you look around the room, you'll see, as we pan around, lots of world music instruments because that's part of our curriculum here. So Joe Galeota, our African teacher, also builds our drums, teaches the drumming and the dancing and the singing, and it's a luxury, he builds the instruments. So this is one of Joe's drums, his boba. We've got sogo and kidi and all the various Awe drums around the room. We've got some Chinese tom-toms. It's a small part of our Chinese tom collection. We've got a Korean chango. I'll tell you about that in a second. These are some more African drums that Joe built. We recently bought some djembes, some beautiful Wula djembes. We also have some djembes made by a friend of mine in Ghana named Vergasto, who's based in the Accra area. And we'll continue further, but let me just tell you a quick story in case it's of interest. This drum set, it's like a 60s Slingerland jazz kit. A woman called us a few years back and said, you know, my husband, Bernie Carl, was a student of Al Lepak's in the 1950s. He was one of Lepak's very first students when Mr. Lepak started our program. And Mr. Carl, Bernie Carl, passed away and he willed his drum set to the Hartt Percussion program, which is beautiful. So it's a complete kit. This is just part of it. We got 2 toms, 2 floor toms, 2 snare drums, and the kick drum. And we kind of rotate the drums that we use in our studio, and so that will be up for rotation next fall. A nice vintage Slingerland drum kit from Mr. Carl. These drum sets were donated by another friend of the studio. This is a beautiful Noble & Cooley custom-made kit. They don't, normally Noble & Cooley doesn't put a wrap on their drums, but the guy that gave us the kit requested it and they did it for him. Then he also donated the Rogers and also a drum set that's in one of our pre-college, like our community division studio. His name is Bill Knight, and he runs a wonderful ad agency in the area, and he just said, you know, I've got some drum sets, and basically Mr. Knight collects drum sets like people collect coins. He's an awesome dude, and he knows more about drum sets and cymbals than I ever will, but he likes to change them out once in a while, so he asked if we'd have use for them, and I thought, you know, you get sort of lower level drum sets donated frequently. I was not expecting this beautiful Rogers and this Noble & Cooley. And so we use those for teaching, and it's a luxury when I'm teaching drum set to be able to play with students. So as I mentioned, you know, we have an array of gear. Some of it is brand new, some of it is quite old. This is a 1940s Slingerland Radio King, which I got at a garage sale, you know, and I really think it's important that the students have the experience playing not just an older instrument, but a calfskin head. So they see what it feels like and hear what it sounds like. So this has been part of my collection for a long time, but I kind of rotate drums in and out. I have a few other vintage drums at my home studio, but this is the one that I've decided to bring in for this semester, this Radio King. Just talking about nooks and crannies, you see a couple whips there hanging on the wall, which were made by a former graduate student. And then you see one of our sirens in case we play ionization.
Nice.
The bata are a reminder that John Amira and Marcus Krieger are currently our guest teachers, and they're teaching us Cuban and Haitian folkloric drumming with a heavy dose of bata. So we've got a couple sets of LP bata, but we recently acquired these, which are imported from Cuba, these sonic bata drums. Shane Shanahan is our current frame drum Middle Eastern percussion teacher. Initially it was Glenn Velez, who did it for 2 rotations. Each rotation is 5 years because there are 5 people. So Glenn was here twice and Shane's been here several times since. So we've got some tars and ricks, and in these bags you've got all kinds of tambourines and kanjira, etc., different sorts of frame drums. Joe and I picked these out at a market in Ghana, one of our trips to Ghana. Joe takes our students there every 5 years. Luckily, we've got some earth plates, which I was reminded of at Zildjian, that are no longer available. They're actually really useful. I encourage them to, you know, market them again. The reminder that we don't have enough space is like down here, we've got 3 beautiful compact congas. We've got our 5th pair of bongos. Like, we're out of shelf room. We gotta finagle some more room in the building. This past semester we studied kete drumming from Africa, so I got some beautiful handmade sticks from Joe, who also made that lunga, this talking drum. These are the doctoral dissertations that my doctoral students have created since I've been here. You can edit this out, but this is very important to me. This is a brick from Cleveland Municipal Stadium. where Jim Brown played. So like my father went and stood in line downtown Cleveland in the middle of winter after they demoed the stadium to build the new stadium and got a brick for his son Ben. Isn't that the best dad ever?
That's not getting edited out, just so you know. That's going in there.
This is really important to me, and if you can see it, a month or so ago I just posted on our Facebook page that I thought it would be fun to collect CDs that my students have made, over the years, and particularly Hartt students, not CCM students, but focusing on my Hartt students. And almost within 2 weeks, we had over 100 CDs, and this is, I think, just a sort of a portion of what's out there. But it's kind of a nice, I think, inspirational nook for the current students to see what their predecessors have done at the school. And it reflects the diversity of our curriculum, because there's drum set work here, there's orchestral work here, there's Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road Ensemble, there's solo, Gene Kaczynski's solo and Quay albums, there's all kinds of stuff. Broadway, original cast recordings with Mike Dobson playing, many, many things. It's a good, diverse array of CDs, and it's also kind of interesting for prospective students to see what's happened here before, over the past 30 years. And then as we continue around, you see some more of Joe Zayway drums, you see our cool Steve Weiss mallet bag, you see a few of our doumbeks. We passed a few over there that were with the inlay, the Arabic style rather than the Turkish style. We've been studying shakerés lately with John and Marcus, so I brought my shakerés in. And then yes, you can see some other miscellaneous drums that we kind of put together from some old Orff drums, actually. Those tacked heads we just put on. We used those before I bought my Chinese drum collection to play Johnny Cage's music. As I've hinted at, I like old snare drums, I like old drum sets, and I like old mallets. So, and some of them are just oddities. Like, we'll start with the most odd mallet I've ever seen in my life. I just bought it because, I don't even know how I acquired it. I don't remember whom I bought it from, but it's a Bobby Christian Super Seg mallet. I'm pretty sure they don't exist anymore. And I assume it's called Super Seg because you can segue from timpani to glockenspiel to triangle to xylophone in the wink of an eye.
Technology, baby.
I think I've had it for about 20 years and we've never quite found the proper application yet, but it'll happen eventually.
It's going to be there when you need it.
Exactly, that's what it's all about, right? And so we got some other Bobby Christian Bell Xylo mounts, which I thought were kind of curious looking. I've got an array of these old Bruno mounts, which are kind of interesting. They're a nice size and just a really beautiful tone. I was lucky that back when Drummer's World existed, I was able to get a pair of these Albright mallets, which are not exactly available. I mean, Mr. Albright passed away several years ago, but this is the exact model that Milt Jackson used. And when I first saw them, it was just sort of an oddity, like, wow, they're so large and they're so short, but then you play them once and it's like, whoa. And I think, honestly, that's part of what inspired Gene to suggest cutting his mallets off to 13 inches, because on one of our tours, he used these and he liked them. I think they sound great and they feel much better than you would ever expect from looking at them. And then after Mr. Albright passed away, his wife continued making them, and at that time she was very kind and custom made several for me. I brought in one pair, and I even, you got to pick the hardness and the size and the length of the shaft and even the color. So of course I picked Batman Black. Got an old pair of Good Vibe mallets, the Dave Samuels model, which of course are not available anymore. And they're important to me because Dave was one of our guest teachers. He taught here for 2 rotations and we miss him very much. And so it's just a nice reminder that he's part of the history of our school, and since he's been replaced by Ted Piltzecker, who does our vibraphone teaching. When I was in the percussion group, Jim and Al had acquired a whole box of these old Billy Dorn mallet heads. And so I bought some, and I got some rattan and mounted them, and they're really a unique old school mallet as well, which, obviously you can't get Billy Dorn. Most of my students would never know who Billy Dorn was. You can look him up. Similarly got some Saul Goodman snare drum sticks, which I know some of these things have come back in different iterations, but this is like an original set. I've got lots of sticks and mallets from my father, who was my first teacher, but these are kind of curious. I don't know what model they are, but these are 1950 jazz brushes. And they feel surprisingly good. They got a nice weight to them, and they're a little bit thinner than the typical rubber sleeved brushes. So they're kind of cool. And this is like the holy grail of rarity, in my opinion. I got a couple pair of handmade Fred Hinger snare drum sticks. I think the guy that I bought these from was named Ed Wiebold. I think he was there was a Hinger connection in Cincinnati. I think Bill Platt, the former principal there, was a Hinger student. And Al Noddy studied with Fred Hinger. So I heard a lot about Mr. Hinger, but I only saw the aluminum tube mallets that he had been making. I had no idea that he actually made snare drum sticks with pieces of bamboo. And I think just the fact that they crack with changes of weather or from playing probably encouraged him to use the aluminum tubes eventually. But these, I can't imagine how old they are. I mean, 40s at least. And they still sound good, and they feel, so you can try them later, they feel surprisingly great on snare drum. Like you'd think, how are you going to roll or play grace notes? But they feel great, and they get a great sound out of the drum. And they're actually engraved touchtone, Hinger, touchtone, hand engraved, yeah.
There's somewhat of a Hartt School Diet Coke connection, and I think I told a couple people about this tour, and if we pop open that fridge, are we gonna see any Diet Coke?
Okay, this is unscripted.
Let's
just see. Boom, baby!
There it is. There it is.
Yeah,
the door's full.
There's more. They're tucked away as well. We work long days here in the Hartt Percussion Studio, and once in a while I need that Diet Coke to kick you through that next lesson.
Brought to you by the last lesson of the day.
Exactly.
So Ben, one of the things that we like to do when we come and visit schools is ask folks if they can either remember their personal first Steve Weiss order or maybe the school's first Weiss order. Can you recall your first Weiss order?
I can recall my first Weiss order, for sure. I mean, I remember learning about Steve Weiss as a high school student and just thinking like this, percussion warehouse, like it seemed like a huge toy shop. And I just couldn't fathom that all that was available at one place. And I remember when I first saw their website, I just spent hours thinking about what I wanted next, and I created a wish list, at least in my mind. But my first order was, I was in high school, and I was starting to get serious about classical percussion. I probably was a junior, so it was the late 1970s. And not only can I tell you what I ordered, but I can show you what I ordered. So, classics, particularly at the time, very in-demand books, 2 Goldenberg books, right? You could tell they've seen the wars. And appropriately enough, my very first Weiss order included the Freezy Lepak timpani method, which I not only used in high school, but then, I used all 3 of these in undergraduate school as well. And of course, honestly, over the years, I've made countless orders at Weiss. And I always appreciated that not only was service quick and there was a huge inventory, but I could also solicit advice from the people that I would be speaking to on the phone. So we're in room 219. That'll mean something to Hartt alumni. This is our main orchestral instrument storage space, although as you see, we've got a variety of things in here, not just orchestral instruments. But it's also an important practice space amongst our facilities. You'll see several of our bata, congas, and bongos that we use for studying with John and Marcus. There's some more congas down here. We've got our hardware collection, most of our hardware, some of our drum sets and tom-toms, some less often used things. We've got this hip gig that I don't know if they make those anymore. I'll quickly tell you this leady bass drum goes with the leady toms that are up here. And these were also donated by a former student of Mr. Lepak. His name was Phil Carpenter. This kit, I think, is late 50s, early 60s vintage. And Phil, shortly before he passed away, invited me to his home, talked about studying with Lepak as a high school student, and asked if we'd like his drum set. And they sound as you can imagine, they sound beautiful. Chinese toms are actually mine. Full disclosure, we just played Third Construction last weekend, and we prefer to play it with Chinese drums, which we brought back from China. And then this collection gives you a hint about like the old and the new. We've got an old WFL field drum. We've got a brand new Pearl Philharmonic field drum. We've got some timbales and various snare drums for various applications. And then down here is our cymbal cabinet. This is probably about, I don't know, 15 or 20% of our cymbal collection. These are a good assortment of crash cymbals, some suspended cymbals that we use frequently, some bass drum beaters, and then we've got 3 bags of cymbals, Zildjian cymbals in the studio.
And then what do we got? What do we got going on here?
So these, yeah. So here's a quiz for you. What piece requires 2 lion's roars? I only know one, to be honest. Third Construction, we just played it.
Very cool.
I think ionization just requires 1 lion's roar. So we just played it, and actually these old timpani were converted to lion's roars by Mr. Lepak.
Oh, wow.
They're the same heads that were on here when I got the job in 1992, and they sound great. We just, we prefer the dowel rods over a rope, and you just dampen the paper towel, and it works every single time.
Nice. You got the vintage Peisty gong stand up there.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
I had no idea. Those were here when I arrived.
Pretty cool.
For sure. We had talked earlier about how the collection has evolved over the years, and let's just say that it was a much smaller collection when I arrived here, and a lot of gear needed repair work. So it's really grown quite a bit. And we're really proud of that. I knew from the very beginning that you cannot, in good faith, recruit serious percussion students unless you had proper gear for them to play on every single day. Dude, talk about getting the shaft. So yes, there's an old saying that goes, necessity is the mother of invention. We needed a place to put our 5-octave Adams marimba, which incidentally was the first 5-octave marimba we ever had at school. There was no place to put it, and this room was kind of like a storage dump. So I, kind of lobbied for it. But it turns out it's not a room at all. This is an old elevator shaft, but they never actually put an elevator in it. So on every floor of this building, there's a storage closet that should have had an elevator, but instead there's storage spaces. And this one we use to practice this is the basement level of the shaft, to practice with our 5-octave Adams marimba. We store some other instruments and handheld instruments.
Is that a wind machine behind there?
Yeah, we actually have a couple homemade instruments. This was made in my very first year here, and it doesn't look like much, but it sounds really good.
Very good. You gotta love the shaft.
Exactly.
Oh,
Hello.
some practicing going on in here. I like this.
Is that Steve Weiss?
It is. It's very nice. What's happening in here?
We're working on this piece called Escape. It's for a triangle sextet.
I'm going to tell you that when you told me it was a piece for triangles, I was like, yeah, okay, I'll name it.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
that is like super
So, like,
cool.
And that's only 1/3 of the piece.
I know.
Yeah,
What kind of triangles are you using?
Funny enough, I have a Black Swamp triangle right here. A 6-inch artisan Black Swamp.
I think that's an
triangle.
old LP.
This one?
I think
The little
so.
guy. Yeah.
I don't know if that's even
Latin
still on
Funny
their
enough,
catalog.
This actually did come from Steve Weiss.
Wow.
When I was
Lo and behold, it was
getting my
David
stuff
McBride.
when I was
Good reference.
Hello.
I thought you were working on rudimental drumming. The doubles are not nearly open enough. It needs to be much more open. The flams need to be cleaner, and I need the accents here and the non-accents here. You got it?
Yeah.
Don't come out of this room until you get it right. Most schools, when you enroll, you're given a locker, right, to keep your mallets and your code and your books and whatnot. And we have the luxury of having like a hallway, and each student is given a room. we try to give grad students their own space, or maybe a space with the younger student that doesn't have a lot of gear. And most of the undergrads are teamed up with 2 or occasionally 3 per room. You can take a peek. This is Joe and Jeffrey's cell.
Yes,
Cool.
take a peek.
Wow. Wow. What's your favorite piece of gear that you have in this room?
The rubber chicken.
Can you demonstrate the rubber chicken for us really quickly?
Yeah, I won this for cooking really good chili.
That's for real. We have
The chili cook-off,
we have
baby.
exactly. We have the 3 parties still every year: fall, spring, and in the middle we have the Super Bowl party, chili cook-off. And did you place
Third.
third? So top 3 chilies get a prize. There were, I think, a dozen chilies entered this year. Everyone's got to taste all 12. Then you vote. And there are serious prizes. That wasn't the only prize you got. What else? What did you get?
Amazon gift card.
And you got how much?
$40.
$40
Wow.
Amazon gift card.
BT doesn't skimp on the prizes.
Not for the chili cook-off.
Steve Weiss on the door, baby. We love it.
The hallway is an important part of Hartt percussion history. It goes back to the days when Stuart Saunders Smith was a student here, graduate student. And Stuart's now about 75, so you can do the math and figure out how long ago that was. And the percussionists were frustrated back in the day that and the building was probably new at the time. It was probably a relatively new space. They were frustrated that they were being run ragged from one rehearsal to the next. And they were frustrated that they didn't have adequate rehearsal space. So as the story goes, the Hartt Percussion Department, as led by Stuart Saunders Smith, went on strike and refused to play in any large ensembles until they got a hallway exclusively for the percussion department. And so we've held on to it. We've clung to it ever since, and we'll never let go of our percussion hallway. So most of the rooms, the students are assigned to share with their friends, and they keep their gear and practice. And 3 of the rooms are designated for shared spaces with Mallet percussion. So this one happens to have our 3rd Yamaha 5100. So people can practice on the same instrument that they'll be using for their lesson.
Cool. Some other drums in here too.
Some other stuff, yeah.
Very nice.
And the next room has a wide bar Adams xylophone
Ooh.
over there, and a Musser vibe. In fact, our vibraphone history kind of has gone in conjunction with our vibraphone teachers. Like Samuels, as a Yamaha artist, he preferred a Yamaha vibraphone, but Ted Piltzecker preferred a Musser vibe. So we've got 2 Musser instruments as well.
Cool.
And then lastly, we've got one more marimba room with a few extraneous things, toy piano up top. But this is a 4.5 octave. It's a 4900 Yamaha. And the unique thing about the marimba, or the useful thing about this instrument, is that although it's not the full 5 octaves, the bars are the exact same width as the 5100. So if you're playing a piece that doesn't require the low notes, you can warm up for your lesson on this, and when you go upstairs, the intervals, everything feels the same, even though it's not quite the same range.
This is my space. I share it with Yu Chen, who is another undergrad. This is my drum set I have set up here. I'm currently working on a show. I'm doing Godspell, so been working on that, shedding that out, kind of get that going, bigger mallet, and then I kind of take this.
Nice. You got some posters.
Yeah, we got some posters on the wall.
The first dollar.
My first dollar.
Your first Pokemon card.
Little snare drums are practicing. And
Cool.
yeah.
Welcome to the Hartt Steel Band Panyard. I started playing steel drums in 1980 as a freshman at the University of Akron, and became a good friend of Cliff Alexis. And when I was teaching in Cincinnati, I started a band there with Cliff Pans. And when I came to the Hartt School after a few years, I started a band here also with Cliff Pans. And then one of my former students was introduced to steel drum building and tuning. His name is Kyle Dunleavy, also based in Philadelphia. And I love Kyle's work. I play a Kyle lead pan now. And so he has supplemented our collection with another set of bass pans. We also have some of his double tenors, double seconds, and a lead pan, which are stored in other rooms. So our instruments are a combination of Cliff Alexis pans, which are now almost 30 years old, and some much newer Kyle Dunleavy pans, and they work beautifully together. And Kyle is one of those tuners that has the skill to tune instruments that other people have made. And he's so busy, I'm grateful that he's willing to come and tune our drums up for us each year. So we call this the Panyard, and students practice in here as well as we store some stuff in here. It's kind of a curious room. It's sort of a hallway that never really goes anyplace. So we acquired it. But in addition to our steel drums, we do keep a few other things. Like I mentioned, we study Brazilian music. So we keep our Brazilian, you see our surdus and some repikes and caixa here. A recent addition is this amazing cajon, which we recently purchased from Steve Weiss.
Look at that. I mean, I'm just going to do a little close up right there. Wow, look at that. King Gong, baby. Actually,
I just noticed this the other day. I had no idea it was there.
Lurking in the shadows, everywhere and nowhere.
We had a anonymous donor give some money to the percussion department a few years ago, and so I thought, well, what gear what I always wanted? What sort of thing have I wanted for a long time, but just couldn't justify because of the cost versus how often you use it? And so that's when we went ahead and got 3 of the Ron Vaughn log drums, soprano, alto, and tenor. We didn't get the bass, although I'm really curious to hear one in person.
It's very cool. We just did a video on it.
I saw it, but I want to hear it in person.
Yeah, I know. It definitely...
It's different.
It's got some more sauce on it.
And we got a set of his temple blocks, and that's actually when we got this cajon. We had another cajon, but this one I felt was like a real upgrade. We also purchased this Yamaha impact drum with that gift. So yeah, that was just a few years ago, one of our more recent purchases. And these are things that we store here because we don't use them quite as often.
Nice.
But we do use them, yeah. So this was the gear tour at the Hartt School. We hope you enjoyed it and found it to be of interest. You're welcome to come join us in person anytime. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to Steve Weiss Music on YouTube.